What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. Today is a very special day because today we are here with Steve. Hi, Steve.
Hi,
and
Bob.
his beautiful 1967 Oldsmobile 442. Now, Steve is nice enough to pull all of these cars out, not just a 67. He's got this beautiful 7442. You said it's a W30?
W34 speed.
W34 speed and his 68 442 convertible. So this is actually going to be sort of a mini series with Steve and all of his beautiful cars. But this first one here, like I said, this is a 1967 Oldsmobile 442. Absolutely beautiful. Factory red, factory GT stripe here, red line tires. I mean, this is a really sharp car. Tell me a little bit about it. How did you come to own this car?
So I purchased this car in 2014, so almost 7 years now, and I was transitioning out of the motorcycle hobby and into the muscle car hobby, and I've always loved the 67 GTO, but at the time I couldn't find a GTO that was actually in my price range. So I happened to stumble across this car out of Stony Creek, New York. I saw it on Craigslist, and I went to go look at the car and absolutely fell in love with it. Now, it didn't quite look like this when I bought it, so that was sort of my initiation into the Oldsmobile world, and it's been all Oldsmobile since, and I've slowly acquired more and more cars over the years.
That's awesome. Yeah. So is this the first Oldsmobile you've owned?
This is the first one, right? This ignited my passion.
So you said the car wasn't exactly in this condition when you got it. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was in great condition. I purchased it from a 35-year GM mechanic. So he did a great job. He did all the motor work on it. So this car isn't stock, it's performance modified. The original 400 is long gone. It was replaced with a 1970 455 that's been performance modified. So the motor is pretty much as I purchased it almost 7 years ago. The body was in great shape. So this was originally a Montana car. It made its way out to Arizona at some point in its life. And then the previous owner, who lived in Stony Creek, New York, flew out to Arizona, saw the car, bought it, and brought it back to the East Coast. So the body is in great shape, all original panels, with the exception of the trunk pan. So the 66 and 67s, because of the French rear window, are notorious for holding water in that channel around the rear window. So at some point in its life, I guess there was some rot in the trunk, but they did a perfect repair. It's virtually undetectable. So aside from the trunk pan, all the other body panels are original on the car.
I gotcha.
It's in really great shape. I decided to have it painted because it wasn't quite the correct factory Spanish red. It was a little bit orange, and so we started the paint and body in 2016.
Wow. Now, Spanish red is the factory color name?
That's the factory color, yeah.
I love old car paint names. Yeah. I mean, Spanish red. You said this is Rally Red.
Rally Red, which is orange.
But I know some of the other 70 colors, like Matador Red, Viking Blue. Yeah. I mean, those are like real sort of power names.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
Super cool. Now, the window. Can you show me where you're talking about?
Yeah. So back here, because the glass is Frenched in under behind these sail panels.
I gotcha.
Water tends to pool up under the trim here. Mm-hmm. And like I've never put a hose to the car, but if it does get caught in the rain, I'll make sure that I take my compressor and blow all the water out of that channel, because if it sits there and pools up, it'll eventually rot and drip down into the trunk. And I believe that's what happened with this car.
Okay, I gotcha. So now the engine, you said, is performance modified.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about that. So it's a 455 taken out of a 1970 442. It's bored 60 over, so the displacement is 468 cubic inches. Edelbrock aluminum heads, Edelbrock intake, Mondello cam, a number of other performance modifications. The exhaust system, I have stainless Kook's headers on it. There's a pipes exchange exhaust system with electric cutouts, so there's a switch under the dash. So it really has some get up and go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I bet it sounds real mean.
It does. It does. And it's a factory air car. So all the original air conditioning components are still on the car and completely functional.
That's awesome.
Including the I think it's R12 refrigerant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
was there any fitment issues with that? Because the 455, I think, is dimensionally a little larger than the 400, right?
It's pretty much the same. The blocks are pretty much the same size. It's the, you know, once you get into the piston bore, it's a lot larger, obviously, for the 455.
I gotcha.
But as far as I know, it was pretty much a direct fit into the car.
I gotcha. Okay.
There are some things that are a little bit tight in there. If you look, you can see when he installed the headers, he had a dent, one of the tubes where it came very close to the steering shaft. So it must have been interesting trying to shoehorn this engine in, especially if you did it with the headers on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I gotcha. So now this car, you said it's your first Oldsmobile.
Yes.
Owned it for about 7 years?
Yeah, almost 7 years now, yeah.
Very, very cool. Do you have a favorite memory in the car?
I do, yeah. So my dad passed away from cancer a couple of years ago, and given that this was my first classic muscle car, he spent a lot of time over here with me when I first got the car, and I was doing a lot of like I said, the engine was done. I mean, I've done a lot of cosmetic stuff to the engine, but when I was doing the body and the interior on the car, my dad spent a lot of time over here, and he loved to go for a ride in the car. So I have a lot of fond memories of my dad riding in this car before he passed away.
That's awesome. So what do you typically use this car for? It's a little performance modified. Do you ever race it?
I never have raced it, no. I've got a lot of money into the car, so things tend to break if you drag race cars. So, plus, it's not completely set up for racing. There's a lot of accessories that add weight, the air conditioning. When I redid the car, the paint and body, we did the interior as well. So there's sound deadener all throughout the car, including on the doors and you know, in the back. So all that adds extra weight. So it's a fast car, but not really of a racing caliber.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, what rear gear do you have in the car?
There's 342 posi in here.
Now, is that still highway friendly? Is that sort of on the border?
It is. I mean, I have taken the car on the highway, but I tend not to take it on journeys more than like an hour and a half, because it does tack out at around almost 4,000 RPM, so it's a little whiny on the highway.
Ooh, wow. Yeah. I had it, what I thought was pretty rough with mine. I had 373s with the turbo 350.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing like 55 on the highway, and I was doing like 3,200 RPM.
Yeah.
I was always worried that I was going to be hurting the car.
It's gotten a little better recently. I added the 15-inch SS1 rims with a 28-inch tire, so the RPMs have come down a little bit on the highway.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah. Original interior, except for the carpet and the headliner.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I did have the seat panel replaced right on this passenger seat where you get in and out. That was worn, but the rest of it is original.
You're saying just this?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, how did you replace just that?
I had an upholsterer do it.
All right, so for 67, the 442 was based off of the Cutlass Supreme, so a pretty well appointed car. Are there any options that this car doesn't have?
Well, I'm sure there are options that it doesn't have. I'm not, you know, off the top of my head, can't think of one. That maybe a cruise control. I think cruise control was an option in 67, although I'm not exactly sure. It's pretty well appointed. It does have the rear window defrost option. It's got the vacuum trunk release option with a button inside of the glove box. Surprisingly, for 67, it's got an AM/FM radio.
Wow.
With the rear speaker option. So even the 70 and 68 don't have AM/FM. So I'm surprised to see AM/FM in this car.
Yeah.
Trying to think. Oh, it's got the rally pack option. So not all 67 442s had that because it was an option.
And that was like the tic-tac tack.
Tic-tac, yes, that's correct.
Very cool.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yep.
All right. So that's really all the questions I had for now. You ready to go for a ride?
Sure.
This is sharp.
See, you're just as high to the ceiling as I am.
Yeah. Could have been a punch.
Oh, that was nothing.
I saw there's a straight bit of the road over here with a whole bunch of tire marks.
Yeah,
Is that you?
That was not me. That was not me. My wife thinks it's me, but it wasn't me.
You said you were into motorcycles for a while. What are some of the cooler bikes that some of these guys may know?
So I've had a number of Harleys. So I started off, I'm a big fan of the Harley Heritage Springer.
Yep.
So I had 3 different Heritage Springers. I had a 97 white with a red stripe. I had a 98 95th anniversary. So that was the maroon with the champagne stripe.
Okay.
And then, sorry, did I say 3? Maybe I had 2. I had so many motorcycles, I thought I had 3. Sorry about that. And then from there, I transitioned over to the baggers. So I had a couple of road glides. I had a black 2002 and a Sedona orange 2011.
Okay.
And I also had a black electric glide that I converted to a street glide. That was a 2007. And I also had a custom chopper. So I had a chopper made by Swift Motorcycles when they were in existence out in Arizona. A number of bikes. So the last one that I owned was the 2011 Road Glide. And I sold that to buy this.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, electric glide versus street glide, as someone who doesn't really know a ton about bikes, what's the difference?
It's pretty much the same bike. The street glide is basically a stripped down electric glide.
Yep.
The electric glide has a few more appointments on it. Back, much more cushy seat. It has a trunk in the back, full stereo, a few other things. So the street glide is just a stripped down, kind of a cooler looking version of the electric glide.
I gotcha.
No offense to electric glides, because I like those too.
Now these vent windows, I love these. I've never been in a car. Well, actually, I don't know if Arthur's had them.
Yeah, if it was a 67, he must have had them. Yeah.
So how do these work here?
Just push it. Push the lever forward, and then push the window out.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah. Get a little ventilation.
That's cool. Very sharp. I always thought cars that had those were like the coolest thing. And the classic smooth Oldsmobile ride on these slightly bumpy roads back here.
I think from the factory this car was probably a little smoother. I've got there's a full Hotchkiss suspension on the car.
Okay.
Including the gas shocks, which makes it a little firmer.
Yep.
And I also have a very fast ratio power steering box.
Ah.
So this car handles almost like a modern car. It handles much nicer than the other tools that I have. So.
Yeah, so this is aftermarket suspension.
Yep.
It doesn't feel stiff. It doesn't feel
no, it's
like harsh at all.
It's perfect, and you don't get that sort of waviness that you typically would get
right
in an Oldsmobile with standard coil springs and hydraulic shocks.
Right. Now that's
but it's not so bumpy that you're getting jarred all over the place.
Right. It's pretty quiet in here, even with the exhaust.
It's not too bad. Yeah, on the highway, it's a little bit louder, obviously, because the engine is tacking out at higher RPMs, but it's relatively quiet. Like as I mentioned before, I do have the heat and sound barrier installed under the carpets and also up on the doors and on the quarters. So that does a lot to suppress the sound.
Very cool.
And also the heat in the summer.
Yeah. Now this gear stick here, is this one of the slapsticks?
It is not. This is a standard automatic transmission air selector. The transmission, which is a Turbo 400, does have a shift kit in it.
Yep.
So, we can start from the low position and then shift up to sport and then finally drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that S was sport. I thought it was like second.
It's sport.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, the Turbo 400 is a bulletproof transmission.
Yeah.
I mean, you can beat the snot out of this thing and not do any damage to it.
Yeah. Now, do you take this to any shows or anything like that?
I do, yeah. I take it to quite a few shows, and it does very well. And a little later, I can bring you into my garage and show you the trophy wall.
Wow.
So it draws quite a bit of attention. I think number one because it's an Oldsmobile, and I think as Oldsmobile owners know, when you go to shows, there aren't too many Oldsmobiles at local shows, but also there's very few 67s around. the 68 to 72 is the more popular body style.
Right.
So when people see a nicely done 67, they go nuts.
Yeah.
It usually gets a lot of attention, especially the Spanish red. Just draws a lot of people in.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that Arthur was saying, is that like when he was restoring his 67, it was particularly difficult. Very difficult to find parts, very difficult to find body panels.
It's not easy. There are some parts that are actually reproduced, but there are some parts that are very hard to find because, you know, frankly, the market's not there. So the aftermarket parts manufacturers aren't going to invest in the tooling if there's not a market. So
pretty interesting too. I didn't notice this in Arthur's 67. Accessory is the other way.
yes,
Like usually it's like
first position.
Right.
Yes.
That's neat.
Yeah, and then the key moved from the dash to the column in 1969. So you see in my 68, the key is still in the dash.
Yep.
But in 69, it's on the column.
Gotcha.
And I think at that point, they also moved from the small keys to the larger key with the GM logo on it. Yeah, so on the 67s, the difference between, one of the differences between the standard Cutlass Supreme and the 442 is the black accenting around the tail lights and also on the trunk lid trim.
Yeah, so I didn't notice that on Arthur's 67. Obviously it was black, couldn't really tell, but that's sharp.
Yeah.
That's really...
And then on the F85 version, the reverse lights, there's no reverse lights in the bumper. They're down here. And it's a smooth bumper on the F85.
Huh. I didn't know that.
The 442 in 67 can only be ordered. Again, it was a handling and appearance package in 67, but it can only be ordered on the Cutlass Supreme.
Very, very cool.
And on the Lansing cars, the one way to verify that it was a factory 442 is on the cowl tag. In the number 5 position, there should be a V. So that denoted the 442, I believe is a W29 option.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So that is going to be it for this video. Steve, thank you so much for showing me around this beautiful 67. We didn't say this before. Unfortunately, this car is going to be going away. It's going to be very sad to see it go, but I'm sure the next owner is going to enjoy it a whole lot.
That's correct. Yes. So as I mentioned earlier, the car originally came from Montana. The car is sold and it's going back to Montana. So the new owner is about to retire and is building a small car collection. Very interesting guy. He actually purchased a body shop in town, is redoing the body shop.
Oh wow.
Full paint booth and everything, expanded it, building his car collection. He owned an expansive hay farm, so the hay farm is up for sale.
Huh.
He's getting out of the farming business and getting into the retirement and relaxation business, and he's going to build his car collection and work on his cars.
That's awesome. What a way to retire.
Yep.
All right, so if you like this video, please click the like button down below. If you want to see more stuff like this, please click subscribe and click the little bell at the bottom so that way you get a notification every time I post a new video. And so if you know anybody that has one of these cars, or if you have one yourself and want to feature it on the channel, please use the contact information below to give me a shout. Other than that, that's it for this video. I'll see you next time.